going live for the 0 people that are out there. Yes, I have been live on the internet more times than I care to imagine in the past several months. I was live all last night with everyone's parents, which, I don't know, I have like 100-something students and only 16 parents showed up, which is like, okay, that's not really a lot, right? She had 5. Yeah, I know that another teacher legitimately had 0. Okay, we'll see what happens. I do see there's one person in there, but we'll kind of figure this out. So let's talk about the 2016 election. In 2016, myself predicted, using the polling data and a little bit of my foreknowledge of past elections and things of that nature, I was able to successfully predict 48 states in D.C., correct. Technically, yes, there are 50 states, but Washington, D.C. counts as 3 electoral votes, so it's like an additional thing. I got 48 out of 51. I got 3 states wrong. The 3 states that I got wrong were Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Here's a reason. I'll give you a little insight into my rationale. The 2016 election happened on November 9th. November 9th. Here are predictions made by some of the better polling organizations in the country at the time, all right before November 9th. They waited until the last minute to put out these predictions because they want to be right. So all these people, yes, Wisconsin. By the way, this is Wisconsin. These are the predictions specifically for Wisconsin. Likely Democrat, lean, likely, lean. Everybody is predicting that Wisconsin will go Democratic. Everybody. If you go back in history, Wisconsin had gone Democratic on every single election, pretty much since I want to say 1992 or 1988 or something like that. 30 years Wisconsin had gone Democratic, and everyone's saying that it's going Democratic. Well, now, why are they saying it's going Democratic? Well, we talk about the polls. This whole lesson today is about polling and sampling and things of that nature. Well, here are the polls for Wisconsin leading up to the election. Now you can see these polls are not being done in like March and April and June. These polls are being done in October, weeks before the election. And you can see here's one poll right here that has Hillary up by 7. Here's a poll that has her up by 2. Here's a poll that has her up by 12. Now, yes, these polls are going to be different. They're sampling variations, natural variations that happens from one sample to the next. You can scroll down a little bit. Now, this is in a 2-person, I believe. Yeah, in a 2-person thing. You can even see, look under Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. Look at 2008. Look at 2012. Barack Obama won this thing running away. By 14 points? He won this by, 7 points? All the polling is saying that Hillary's going to win. Everyone's like, this is going to be a landslide. You can see when it's a 3-way race, she's up by 8, she's up by 4, she's up by 5. These are insurmountable. But then what happened on election night? Everything changed. Now obviously Trump won, but he won by, hold on one second. Let me see if I can actually get this here, because I can get to actual Wisconsin in a moment. Come on. Where are you, Wisconsin results? There you are. There are the results. Oops. What is that? There we go. He won by less than 1%. Less than 1%. Now, one might argue, oh, well, all of these extra people came out that never came out before. It's not actually the case. That's not actually the case. This is actually a really interesting piece of information here. Wisconsin presidential vote history, boom. There we go. You can see the history. Look at this. Donald Trump won the state by less than 1%. He won about 1.4 million margin, very tight margin. But then if you go back to Barack Obama, well, actually, look at this. Let me get my marker here. Check this out. What do you notice about those two numbers? About the same, but Mitt Romney had more, right?
Yeah.
In 2012, Mitt Romney lost the state of Wisconsin. He lost it. But Mitt Romney had more votes than Donald Trump did in 2016.
That's crazy.
Right? A lot of people, a lot of Democrats didn't come out and vote, or a lot of people who were in the middle, who were undecided or independent, did not come out and vote. Why were the polls so wrong? The polls can only report what they collect. I can go out as a pollster and I can collect all this data, and I can only report on the information that I collect. I can't lie about it. I can't spin it. I just put it out as is. Let me explain to you exactly what happened in 2016. In 2016, a polling company would go out and they would say, okay, I have to poll 1,000 people. Okay, I got to poll 1,000 people. If I'm going to poll 1,000 people, I better ask a lot more than 1,000, a lot more than 1,000. And the reason for that, the reason I got to ask a lot more than 1,000 is because there's going to be a ton of people who are going to say, no, thank you. I don't want to participate in your poll, which is, it's perfectly acceptable. I mean, what's typically going to happen when people get phone calls for, to get like, hey, you want to participate in a survey? What's going to happen? They pretty phone call. That's an unknown number, right? You're going to find an interesting statistic later. But so let's say I go out and I poll 1,500 people, but only 1,000 of them actually say, yes, I'll participate in your poll. Now, I'm making these numbers up, but this is what happened in Wisconsin. So let's say 1,000 people actually responded. And of those 1,000 people, 600 of them told me they're going to vote for Clinton, and 400 of them told me that they're going to vote for Trump. And I say, okay, as a statistician, as a pollster, I have to do my job. So I analyze these results, I type up a report, I submit it, and now all of a sudden on CNN, they're reporting, well, look at this. In Wisconsin, Clinton's up 60-40. Clinton's winning by 20 percentage points in Wisconsin. They're not wrong. I'm not wrong. These are the results that I collected. There's nothing we can really do about that. When you put out a sample, when you put out a poll, your job is to eliminate bias. You are to eliminate bias. We're going to talk a bit more about bias next week, but I could say something along the lines of, hey, do you guys think that the speed limit on the parkway should be raised to 75 miles an hour? And you'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? Cool, right? Okay. Do you think that the speed limit on the parkway should rise to 75 miles an hour knowing that it would kill more people? Oh, all of a sudden you're changing your tune.
Actually, yeah. I would say, yeah. You know what?
So you endorse killing more people?
No. It's just, it's your own fault.
I know. But your initial reaction, though, you know what that was? That was a completely biased question. Completely biased. When you put out a poll, when you put out a question, when you put out a sample, your questions have to be, to the best of your ability, unbiased. You want to remove as much bias as possible in order to get down to people's core beliefs. So, what happened in Wisconsin? Well, bias crept in Wisconsin, and it's the type of bias that, unfortunately, we can't do anything about. What happened was this. How many people did not respond to the survey? 500. Let's assume for a moment that those 500 people are going to go vote. My hope, as a pollster, my hope is that those 500 people are going to have similar voting records as to the ones that actually did respond. I'm hoping that those 500 people are going to have a similar breakdown of 60-40. That's my hope, and I can't do anything about it. But what happened was, when those 500 people went to the polls, 400 of them voted for Trump, and 100 of them voted for Clinton. And even though my poll said 60-40 Clinton, the actual results of Wisconsin gave Trump the state. This is something called non-response bias. This is something called non-response bias. The bias is in those who did not respond. This happened in the Rust Belt. It didn't happen anywhere else. It only happened in the Rust Belt. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, where people were being polled, people who were good representatives of the state, like their opinions were represented across the state a lot more than anything else. And they were saying, hey, you want to participate in this poll? Who are you going to vote for president? And in their minds, they're like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I think you're going to manipulate my opinion. No, thank you. Now, they don't say that out loud, but they think that. They think, well, I don't trust the media. I don't trust this. I don't trust that. So I am not going to participate in your poll. Now there's a domino effect. Clinton thinks she's up 60-40. She doesn't go to visit Wisconsin in the last 2 months of the election because she thinks it's wrapped up. Whereas Trump goes to the Rust Belt like at least 20 more times in the last 2 months of the election. It was a huge domino effect where once those 3 states were the only 3 states that changed everything. Everything else went the way we thought it would. Those 3 states were the ones: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Ohio, we knew Ohio was going to go Republican, but this election is going to be great. I'm going to live stream the election. It's going to be great. I can't show the TV, but I'm going to have like a whiteboard in my living room. I'm going to have a camera set up, and you're going to be able to see exactly what I'm doing on election night. Oh, it's going to be great. You're going to show up for like 5 seconds, and you're like, nope, and then you're going to click to something else. So I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. No, but you don't have to. But I am going to live stream on the election night because it's going to be my Super Bowl. I love the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah? For the Saints? Nice. You know, won me? The Chiefs kicker. Yeah, because he had to kick 3 50-yard field goals, 2 of which didn't count. My goodness. Anyway, back to this. This isn't math of sports.
I wish I could join that class in this period.
Oh, in this period. Yeah, it's a 2B class. Yeah. Anyway, but this is what happened. And it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, well, we can do all the polls that we want. We can do all the polls in the world. But in reality, these polls are just guessing. That's all that they're doing is guessing. Do you guys know on election night, November 9th, 2016, November 9th, 2016, do you know what the New York Times, they set up a percentage chance of things happening. They gave Hillary Clinton a 99% chance of winning the presidency. 99. That's insane. Now, they updated it throughout the night. And throughout the night, it kept going like this throughout the night, just very, very slowly throughout the night until eventually, boom, It's so interesting how, despite all of the advanced technology, the advanced mathematics, the advanced statistics that we can have, we can still screw this up, the polling, so greatly. But again, we can only collect information that we get. Now, I want to show you something.
Did you do one from last year?
What do you mean one from last year? Well, the thing is, I typically focus on the polls, obviously closer to the election itself, because if you ask somebody in like 2018 what they think about the 2020 election, they don't even know what's going on. You can have like 20% of the people say, I don't know. Yeah, it was great. But this is what I want to show you, though. Check this out. It's a website called realclearpolitics.com. And let me go to the North Carolina poll. And let me pick this one. I think this is the one I want. I believe it is. Yes, they have a report. A lot of these links have reports. There it is. So, state by state, they ask people, hey, who are you going to vote for? But this is the number that I wanted to point out to you. What is this?
2.09%.
What does that mean? That's ridiculous. 2%. 2%.
So you can't even really do anything like that.
You go out and you ask 100 people and only 2 responded. So they asked 1,000 people and 200 responded. No, not 200. I'm sorry. 20? Can't do math today. Yeah, 200 over 1,000 would be 20%, right? Yeah, I'm losing my mind today. So you ask 1,000 people and only 20 respond. 20,
That's crazy.
right? But this is the reality that we're faced with. As a statistician, as a pollster, this is the unfortunate reality that you are only going to get the responses of people who are willing to give you their response. We're never actually going to know how people feel because there is a large portion of this country on both sides of the political aisle, left and right, who don't trust the polls and thus will never participate in them. And since they will never participate in them, we will never truly know what's going on. Now, check this out. Look, they actually did have over 1,000 respondents. They actually had over 1,000 respondents, which means that they probably asked roughly, 20,000 people, something like that. That is insane. I don't know. 2% of the population is giving their opinions, and that's what's being reported on the news. Can't do anything about it. So that's why I asked you guys in that in the Google Classroom discussion, what's a better way? How do we go out? How do we get this information? How do we get it unbiased? A lot of you guys were suggesting, well, let's send out like emails. Well, the thing is, it's like, I don't check my email every day. Number one. Number two, I tend to delete a lot of emails that look like junk. Just delete them. I don't care. People tend to respond to things when they feel passionately about them. People tend to respond to things when they feel passionately about them. Did I give you the exercise example? Check this out. Imagine Barnegat Township put out an announcement. We are going to do a township-wide fitness test, right? And it's like, listen, we want people from all age groups. We want people from, teenage years, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. As old as we get, we want to see how fit Barnegat Township is. So come on out, participate in our fitness test. Do you really think that I'm going to go out and participate in a fitness test? Pretty much. People who are in shape are going to be like, heck yeah, let me do this. And then they do the results of that fitness test and they're like, oh, wow, Barnegat Township is really fit. No, the 50 people who participated are really fit. There's got to be a better way. And here's the thing. I don't have an answer. There's no clear-cut answer to this. Phone calls, emails, announcements on TV, internet ads. There's no clear-cut answer as to how to get people's true opinion. It's like throwing darts in the dark, just hoping for the best. I love it. So, samples. A lot of companies end up hiring statisticians. They hire statisticians because they want data to be collected. They want things to be analyzed. Going into a career as a statistician, you can make big money by taking limited information and making a confident conclusion with it. I said this on day one. Statistics is making confident statements with limited information. So I want you to pay close attention to this video. I'm going to pause it at various times to kind of write numbers on the board, but I want you to see what can happen with statistics, where if you report it like this, you get a certain result. But if you kind of twist it a little bit and then report it this way, you get the completely opposite result. Watch what happens. I'm going to try and turn the volume up on the computer so the people online can hear it through the microphone. There we go.
Statistics are persuasive, so much so that people, organizations, and whole countries base some of their most important decisions on organized data. But there's a problem with that. Any set of statistics might have something lurking inside it, something that can turn the results completely upside down. For example, imagine you need to choose between two hospitals for an elderly relative's surgery. Out of each hospital...
Now, hold on. You want to choose a hospital. Typically, you want to pick the hospital that does what? That's better. How do you measure how a hospital is better? Well, they're going to show you a very basic way of measuring that.
Hospital's last 1,000 patients, 900 survived at Hospital A, while only 800 survived at Hospital B.
Now, I'm going to pause it there for a second. They basically said, hey, let's look at the last 1,000 patients. If we look at the last 1,000 patients, let's see how many of them survived. That's a very basic way of saying, like, okay, well, who's better? They had a 90% survival rate, hospital A. They had an 80% survival rate, hospital B, out of 1,000 patients each. At this point, you'd be like, yeah, I'm going to hospital A. At this point. Now, let me ask you, before I actually continue playing the video, what would you like to know more about those 1,000 patients? Because we're just talking about 1,000 patients walking into the hospital. People go into the hospital for all sorts of reasons. I can go in with a broken leg. I expect that if I go into the hospital with a broken leg, I expect I'm going to be coming out alive, right? Yeah, I hope so too. But if I go in with heart palpitations, I hope to come out alive, but there's a higher chance that I might not. See what happens.
So it looks like hospital A is the better choice. But before you make your decision, remember that not all patients arrive at the hospital with the same level of health. And if we divide each hospital's last 1,000 patients into those who arrived in good health and those who arrived in poor health, the picture starts to look very different. Hospital A had only 100 patients who arrived in poor health, of which 30 survived. But Hospital B had 400, and they were able to save 210.
Oh, I'm going to pause it right there because they're going to show me some. I remember what these numbers were from yesterday. But here's those who arrived in poor health. You arrive in poor health, there's a 30% survival rate. But if you arrive in poor health to this hospital, I believe they're going to say 52.5% once I unpause the video. So basically, if you're in poor health, if you have heart palpitations, if you have some late stage cancer, if you have, I don't know, whatever it may be, whatever poor health you're arriving in, if you go to hospital B, there's a much higher survival rate.
So hospital B is the better choice for patients who arrive at hospital in poor health with a survival rate of 52.5%. And what if your relative's health is good when she arrives at the hospital? Strangely enough, hospital B is still the better choice with a survival rate of over 98%.
Now, they're not actually showing the statistics here in terms of who actually survived out of this. But if you arrive in good health, they're saying that you had a 98% survival rate at hospital B. Poor health or good health, the better choice is B. But if you take all of those results and kind of clump them together into a single group of 1,000 people, all of a sudden the 90% is better. It's kind of messed up.
So how can hospital A have a better overall survival rate if hospital B has better survival rates for patients in each of the two groups? What we've stumbled upon is a case of Simpson's paradox, where the same set of data can appear to show opposite trends depending on how it's grouped. This often occurs when aggregated data hides a conditional variable, sometimes known as a lurking variable, which is a hidden additional factor that significantly influences results. Here, the hidden factor is the relative proportion of patients who arrive in good or poor health. Simpson's paradox isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It pops up from time to time in the real world, sometimes in important contexts. One study in the UK appeared to show that smokers had a higher survival rate than non-smokers over a 20-year time period. That is, until dividing the participants by age group showed that the non-smokers were significantly older on average, and thus more likely to die during the trial period, precisely because they were living longer in general. Here, the age groups are the lurking variable and are vital to correctly interpret the data. In another example, an analysis of Florida's death penalty cases seemed to reveal no racial disparity in sentencing between Black and white defendants convicted of murder. But dividing the cases by the race of the victim told a different story. In either situation, Black defendants were more likely to be sentenced to death. The slightly higher overall sentencing rate for white defendants was due to the fact that cases with white victims were more likely to elicit a death sentence than cases where the victim was black, and most murders occurred between people of the same race. So how do we avoid falling for the paradox? Unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. Data can be grouped and divided in any number of ways, and overall numbers may sometimes give a more accurate picture than data divided into misleading or arbitrary categories. All we can do is carefully study the actual situations the statistics describe and consider whether lurking variables may be present. Otherwise, we leave ourselves vulnerable to those who would use data to manipulate others and promote their own agendas.
Now, that last phrasing is what it's all about. People who manipulate data to promote their own agendas. As a statistician, your job is to be unbiased. As a statistician, your job is to be ethical. However, there are a lot of statisticians in this world who work for various companies who analyze data and present it in such a way to make their company or organization look better. And that's not nice, that's not fair, but as a statistician, if you basically say, I'm going to hang my morals up at the door, you could make a pretty good living that way, believe it or not. But if I wanted to, I enjoy teaching way too much. If I had to sit in a cubicle or at a desk for my entire career, I'd lose my mind. If you notice, like, I mean, you know, this is your second year with me, right? Like, how often do I just sit there? Like, yeah, even when I'm writing notes. When I write notes, because I had the desk up here last time, even when I'm writing notes, I'm constantly, I have to move, you know? But anyway, people manipulate data. And the thing is, when you collect samples and you analyze the data results, we cannot manipulate the way that the data is supposed to be presented. That is part of the lesson that I want to show today. I'll tell you one more anecdotal story, and then I want to get into notes. This is a true story. With a very incorrect conclusion. There was a village in Europe in the 1700s. And this village, people are looking around, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, there are a lot more storks than there were before. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're noticing there's like a giant increase in the number of stork nests around town. Like, wow, that's pretty crazy. And then what ended up happening less than a year later, a stork is a bird. Yeah. What ended up happening less than a year later? There was a population explosion in babies. Conclusion, okay, the number of storks increased. The number of babies increased. Storks bring babies. Yay, we can all go home now. Clearly, that is not the case. Storks do not bring babies to couples. Storks do not fly through the air, despite whatever cartoon movies you've seen in the past. So how is that possible? How is it possible that there was a clear increase in storks and a clear increase in babies? There is a correlation, and people use this phrase all the time. There was a clear correlation between storks and babies. But just because there is a correlation does not mean that one caused the other. It does not mean that one caused the other. The reason why there was an increase in the baby population, well, there was a bunch of young couples who moved to the village, and they built their homes. Mind you, this is the 1700s. And they built their homes in a brand new style. And this brand new style had a very particular type of chimney. And storks like to make their nests in warm places. So where are they going to make their nest? They're going to make their nest in these chimneys or around these chimneys to stay warm. But what's going to happen when you have a young couple in their first home after just getting married? What are they typically going to do? Have a kid, procreate, right? So they built the brand new homes for their family. The storks came in for the chimneys, but then the young couples had babies. There was a lurking variable. And these are the things that we do have to investigate. That phrasing, correlation, does not equal causation. Can we all agree that smoking causes cancer? Right? Is that fair? Long-term smoking. Like, if I smoke a cigarette today, I'm not going to get like cancer tomorrow. But long-term smoking leads to cancer. In the 1960s, they couldn't prove it. They could not prove it. Oh, you had your hand up for a second. Okay. They couldn't prove it in the 1960s at all. And the reason why they couldn't is because the cigarette companies were like, listen, clearly there's a correlation. But correlation does not mean causation. Doesn't mean that at all. And they were able to prove that through statisticians and mathematicians. The only way that you can actually prove that smoking causes cancer is by an experiment, which is unethical. I can't force somebody to smoke for 20 years. Or through a long-term observational study by saying, okay, we're observing this group of 100 people. These people, 20 of these people started smoking when they were 17, and the rest of them did not. Let's see what happens over the course of their entire lifetimes. Oh crap, the smokers more often than not, the smokers got cancer or some junk like that. Statistics is incredibly helpful, but at the same time, statistics can be dangerous in the hands of the wrong person. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, I need to get you some information, some notes, if you will. So if you would, and I already see them out there, so I'm going to yell at the 3 people that are in the chat. If you do not already have your notebooks out, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Yeah, you 3 people in the chat who I have no idea who you are. Here we go.
That's so violent.
Math is violent. I don't know. Oh, I clicked on another video. Get out of there. Come on. There we go. Click. Let's see here. Pull that back a little. There we go. Good. That's my marker. There's my marker. All right. Today is the 22nd. These are your notes on the type of samples that we're going to be taking. Now, like I said, unfortunately, we can't go out into Barnegat High School and collect these samples. If we were, they would have to be random. You need randomized samples in order to have accurate results. If your results are not randomized, then unfortunately your results are going to be skewed. But we don't have that option. We really don't. First of all, you've heard this word before, census. In a few words, because I know you've heard the word before, but in a few words, what does it mean? A census. Every 10 years, the United States takes a census of its population. A census is where you survey all the people in a population. A census is where you survey all the people in a population. Typically, a bad idea. It's typically a bad idea to do a census. Think of it this way. I work at Coca-Cola, and I have a brand new Coca-Cola flavor that I want to throw at you. It's blueberry Coca-Cola. They've done orange, they've done vanilla, they've done cherry, right? Coca-Cola. Yeah, I'm going to throw blueberry Coke at you. It sounds disgusting. But I need to do a survey. So I decide to do a census of the United States, a census to determine, well, do people really like blueberry Coca-Cola? So I'm going to do like taste testing across the country with all 330 million people. What's wrong with that? What could go wrong, or what could happen, or what kind of seems not right about going out and me surveying all 330 million Americans as to whether or not they like blueberry Coca-Cola? So some people don't drink soda. What else? Oh, maybe they're just like, no, gross. I really don't want to taste that. No, thank you. They don't want to participate.
That's really it.
How long would it take me to do that? A very long time. How much money would it take for me to complete that? A lot of money. Typically, a census is a bad idea. Typically. The United States, by law, does a census every 10 years. They do the census every 10 years to count the American people, and they do it for two main reasons. Number one, it affects federal funding, because if your state has lost a lot of people, you're not going to get as much in terms of federal funding. Number two, it affects the number of people in the House of Representatives for your state. California right now has 55 electoral votes, 2 senators, 53 representatives. But that 53 representative number could change, especially considering the fact that people have been leaving California in droves. So the next time they do the change, they may go from 53 representatives down to 52 representatives because they've lost people and will receive less in federal funding. Sometimes the census is a good idea. Sometimes. For example, if I wanted to do a census of Mr. Markey's Prob stat class cohort 2, just cohort 2, could I do that? You're shaking your head no. Why not?
I mean, you could, but it's not going to do anything. There's 2 people in.
But wouldn't that be all of cohort 2?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be the entire population? I could do a census. I could do a census of cohort 2 Prob stat. Yeah, absolutely I could. Could I go out right now, Tuesday, September 22nd, and go out and survey all of Barnegat High School? Could I do that right now? Could I walk around to every classroom and do a census of everybody at Barnegat High School? I can't. Not everyone's here. You see what I'm saying?
We're talking about the whole school box.
Oh, yeah. It depends on the context of the situation. Typically, a census is a bad idea. Typically. Costs too much money, takes too much time. Sometimes it can work. Sometimes. Let's talk about an SRS, otherwise known as a simple random, in fact, it's spelled random today, sample. Otherwise, it could also be known as a simple random survey. But I'm going to abbreviate the word population. From the population, every person has an equal chance of being picked. This is a simple random sample. Every person within the population has an equal chance of being picked. So if I went out right now and tried to do a simple random sample of Barnegat High School, I could not. I could not because not everyone's here. Let's say it was last year. I don't know, like, yay for last year, whatever, 2019. Let's say that every single Barnegat High School student showed up to school. Let's just say they did. Okay? I know that never happens, but let's just say they did. If I went out at 8:10 in the morning and every Barnegat High School student had shown up to school, and I went out and I tried to do a simple random sample, would I be able to? Think carefully now. If every single Barnegat High School student showed up to school, and I went out at 8:10 in the morning, and I tried to do a simple random sample, would every Barnegat High School student have an equal chance of being selected? You're shaking your head no. Why not? You're saying yes. Why?
Because why not?
Because why not?
I mean, you wouldn't be wrong for doing it.
Where are the AMVO students? Didn't they show up to school? But they're not here. So that's what I'm saying. In order for it to be a simple random sample, everyone has to have an equal chance. But if you're an AMVO student, sorry, you're not in the building. You showed up.
What if you do it early?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Do you know what time people typically get phone calls for surveys? Dinner time. Because they believe that they have a higher chance of catching you at home if it's dinner time. I know. Because if it's work hours, you're only going to get like house moms and kids home from school sick and junk like that. If it's like 9 or 10 p.m., people are going to be asleep or whatever. If it's like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, people are going to be at like soccer practice or some junk like that. I don't know. Or not home from work yet. But if you call between 5 and 7 p.m., then you have a better chance of getting people. It's a manipulative game. But yeah, simple random sample. Everybody has to have an equal chance of being selected. Let's talk about a systematic sample. Systematic sampling. Now, what the heck is a systematic sampling? It's actually quite simple once the explanation is given. Systematic sampling. Now, let's say the population is in an order that is considered random. The population is in an order that is considered random. So you select every nth person. So you select every nth person. Oh, total side note, I totally forgot to bring this part up. Okay, let's go back to a simple random sample for a moment. Do you know how I would absolutely 100% be able to do a simple random sample of Barnegat High School students? I go down to the main office, I ask for an alphabetical list of every student enrolled, and I select off of that list. That would be a simple random sample. That would be. But let's talk about systematic. The population is in an order that is considered random, so I select every nth person. What are you guys doing at 7 a.m.? Are you actually like in the building at 7 a.m.? Or like, do they let people in like into the lobby? No, well, let's say like most people. Are you allowed? Okay, because I didn't know what time they actually let kids like stand in the lobby. You know, whatever. Okay, so. True, very true. Okay, so let's say I'm standing at one of the doors, and they just let the buses out, and all the kids are walking towards the building. Is it fair to say that the order in which the kids are walking into the building is considered random? I would say, yeah, I would absolutely say it is. Like, because, you know, people aren't going to walk into the building in the exact same order that they always do. It's not always like, hey, now let all the kids with last name A come in. No, it's random. They just open the doors to the buses and everyone comes out. And the order in which they come into the building is quote unquote random. So I stand at the doors and I say, okay, I am going to pick every fifth kid that comes in the door, and I'm going to give them $5. Whatever. It is a lot of money, I know. But that is systematic sampling. The order in which they're coming in is random, and I decide, I'm going to pick every fifth kid, or every 10th kid, or every third kid, or whatever. As long as I do something along those lines, it's systematic sampling. I can go to Walmart, and I could select every 10th person that walks out the door and sample them, or survey them, or question them. That would be systematic sampling. You guys like Boston cream donuts? Why not? I'm just saying. Boston cream donut? No? All right, fine. That's fine. They're amazing. The reason why I bring up Boston cream donuts is because it relates to the last two parts of sampling that I got to show you. Are they the last two? Oh, yeah, there's one more page after this, but we'll get there. Let's talk about cluster versus stratified. These are the different types of sampling that you could potentially do. Let's talk about a Boston cream donut. Now, even if you don't like Boston cream donuts, that's fine, but you know what they look like, right? Cool. So imagine a Boston cream donut. Now, I mentioned these two samplings. There's cluster sampling and there's stratified sampling, and I'm relating this to a Boston cream donut. If you take that Boston cream donut and you just take a decent bite of it, what is there? There's the chocolate. There's the, I don't even know, like the donut part, like the flaky donut part. The dough, I guess it is. Yeah, I know, it's like cooked. It's dough when it's not cooked, but like, whatever. But it's like the breadish part. So there's the chocolate, the British part, the filling, the Boston. You have all these different parts of the donut. If you took a bite of a Boston cream donut, is it fair to say that are you okay? Oh my word. If you took a good bite of a Boston cream donut, would you say that that one bite would have a good, not equal, but a good representation of all of the parts of a Boston cream donut? I would. You take a giant bite, you'd be like, okay, I can taste the chocolate, I can taste the filling, I can taste the doughish breadish part, I can taste the Boston, you can taste all of that stuff in that one giant bite. Cool. That is one of these types of sampling. Typically it's not a Boston cream donut I talk about. Sometimes it's like a Boston cream pie, but it's the same concept, Boston cream pie, where you take a slice of that Boston cream pie, and that slice has a good representative nature of all the components of the Boston cream pie. That is a cluster sample. A cluster sample is a slice. I'm going to call it something else, but it's a slice that represents the whole thing, a small slice. A cluster sample is a sample from the population. I'm abbreviating population. That represents, if I can spell represents today, represents every component of the population. A cluster sample is a sample that represents every component of the population. Typically, it is, I can visually represent it as a slice. And that slice, once removed from the population, that slice unto itself is a mini representation of the entire population. So for example, let's say that I took you guys as my sample. And I'm saying you guys as my sample represent Barnegat High School. Do you guys have every representative component of Barnegat High School students? Why not? Why not? No.
We just don't.
What grade y'all in? You would say 11. You're both seniors. Yeah, you definitely don't represent all of Barnegat High School. I mean, we have to get the dumb freshman opinions. You know what I'm saying? But if I wanted to get a cluster sample of Barnegat High School, how would I do that then? If I wanted to get a good representative nature of Barnegat High School, I want to get a slice of Barnegat High School that has all grade levels, all academic levels, all athletic abilities, all political beliefs, things along those lines. Imagine the cafeteria last year. Clearly not this year, but imagine the cafeteria last year. I walk into the cafeteria, it's full, students are at every table, and I randomly select like a table. And like the table stretches from one side of the room all the way to the other, or stretches from one side of the room all the way to the cash registers or some junk like that, right? If I randomly select just everyone sitting in that straight line, is it possible, or is it theoretically possible that I would get every grade level? I could, where's my marker? It's like, how are the tables set up? The tables are set up like where you have like a thing like this and a thing like this, and then here's another table and then another thing and another thing, right? So if I just randomly, I'm getting different markers so you can see it. I randomly select this one. And I say, everybody in this row, I'm going to survey you. Yeah, theoretically, that slice could represent all of Barnegat High School. That slice could have a good number of all grade levels, athletic abilities, political beliefs, etc. It also depends on what you're trying to sample. But Vo kids don't. Oh no, sometimes Vo kids do sit in the cafeteria. It depends on which lunch you actually get them, though, because Vo kids usually leave 9:50ish, something like that. Yeah, or the PM Vo, I should say. Yes, the PM Vo. But the AM Vo kids are coming back. So, oh, are they not? Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know. Stupid freshmen. Anyway. I will continually and forever make fun of freshmen. You know what's funny? Seniors, if you decide to go to college, you know what you are next year? Freshmen. It's just funny. Anyway, let's go back to the Boston cream pie. If you take a slice of Boston cream pie, or if you take a nice bite of a Boston cream donut, that is a cluster sample, because that bite or that slice is a good representative of the entire population. But now imagine for one moment, I take that Boston cream donut and I separate it. I separate it into the chocolate. I separate it into the filling. I separate it into the Boston. I separate it into the, whatever the donut bread part is. I separate it into those 4 separate components. Then I sample a little bit of chocolate. I sample a little bit of filling. I sample a little bit of the breadish thing. I sample a little bit of the Boston. And then I do my survey from there. That is a stratified sample. A stratified sample is where you take the population, you separate it into these weird components, and then you sample from the components. Now, there's a certain name for it. A stratified sample is where you sample from each homogeneous, if I can spell it correctly, which I can, from each homogeneous group in the population. Each homogeneous group is known as a strata. If I wanted to do a stratified sample of Barnegat High School, I could first separate all of you into grade level. And I could say, okay, take a little bit of the freshmen, sample a little bit of the sophomores, a little bit of the juniors, a little bit of the seniors. If I do it that way, that is a stratified sample. I could take the population of Barnegat High School and I could split you up by academic level. Here's the honors AP, here's the CP kids. I sample a little bit from here, I sample a little bit from there. Why would that even be necessary? Why would it be necessary, I guess, to first separate you guys into strata and then sample you? For example, as seniors, I'm not saying you have the whole world figured out yet. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But as seniors, do you guys have a kind of an idea as to what you're going to do after high school? That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. You have an idea? It's perfectly fine. You have an idea. So if the question was, what are your plans for after high school? Seniors would have a more rounded plan versus dumb freshmen, where if I ask them, what are you going to do after high school? Most of them have no stinking idea. But it would be important to sample everybody, but in these separate strata, because then I could say, okay, here's the freshman opinion. Here are the sophomore opinion. Here's the junior opinion. Here's the senior opinion. And it would be beneficial to me because I can now see clearly the senior opinion is this, whatever it may be, and the freshman opinion, well, they're just picking their noses. Dumb freshmen. I think I told you the story last year where I had some I was teaching Algebra 2. It was several years ago. And there were some kids running through the hallway. And I'm like, stupid freshman. I tell you this story? So there were kids running through the hallway. And I remarked to my class, I'm like, dumb freshman. And then other kids in the class were like, yeah, freshmen are so dumb, blah, 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 blah. And then I just kind of kept going with it. I'm just like, hey, guys, let's just go out and let's just start beating up freshmen. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. Now there's the one kid sitting over there who's a freshman in Algebra 2. And literally he's just like, yeah, guys, let's go get him. And I'm like, that's a cool kid, willing to beat up his own kind. Anyway. Oh, freshmen. No, but seriously, freshmen come in thinking they own the place. I'm glad I don't really teach many freshmen. I teach mainly upperclassmen. All right, last little bit, and then I'm going to call it a day on these notes. I'll show you, actually, I'll turn off the live stream at some point, but I'll show you guys my analysis on the election, because I did an analysis yesterday, because yesterday we had a back-to-school night. And even though I had 16 parents, there was a block of a half an hour to an hour where I was doing nothing. So I decided to do an analysis. Ways to collect data. Oh, fun fact, has nothing to do with today. The word data The word data or data. Is it singular or plural? Do you say the data is or the data are? Yeah.
No. Yeah, that all.
The word data is technically plural, which is weird. And if you wanted to use it as singular, it would have to be the word datum. Weird. Anyway, number one, and this is what we're going to be mainly focusing on with the first marking period project, ways to collect data through a survey. You could also collect data through an experiment, which I believe at the end of last year, my AP kids, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I think some of them did an experiment. Did one of you guys do a survey last year where you had to like taste test food or drink or something like that? Nice. Was it like cereal or?
I think it was candy.
Okay. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like that kind of taste testing, that's an experiment. You can also collect data through observational studies. Observational studies are safer than experiments because most of the time they already happened and you don't have to really do much about it, but it's still important. And something we did last week with Hi-Ho Cheerio, you could also collect data through a simulation. Obviously, with the simulation, you don't have to actually set up the real life scenario. It saves a lot of time and energy and money. See? Oh, yeah. Let me just read it fast real quick. But yeah, this is the last bit of notes that I was going to write down today.
Yeah, I wrote it down too.
I got you. But yeah, for now, just for the sake of argument, while I'm writing this out, because it'll take me a few moments. What is today's date? The 22nd. Thank you. I am going to be assigning something later this week. That's going to be due next week, of course. I am next week hopefully going to be doing the beginnings of the project. I'm saying this for the live stream as well, you know, and we'll kind of see where it goes. Yep. All right. In the meantime, I know we're like 7 minutes out, but this was the last page of notes that I wanted to cover. I am going to show a little bit of my election analysis. Hey, you know what? I'll leave the live stream on for the election analysis, but I'm done with notes. I am definitely done with notes. Yeah. So since 2016, I have gotten pretty like nuts about the election. I don't know why. I just have. So I've decided to try and do an analysis of a lot of different things. And what that ended up looking like, if I can get to my Google Drive, something like this. Close that. Open that. Boom. Okay. So here, this is the first part of my analysis. Basically, what I did was this. I went through every state, and I determined whether they voted Republican or Democrat in every election since 1972. Just because, like, for example, Alaska. Alaska has voted Republican in every election since 72. I'm pretty certain Alaska is going to go Republican. DC has voted Democrat in every election since 1972. I'm pretty sure DC is going to go Democrat. You know, just random stuff like that. This is how you can clearly see Florida is a swing state. Florida is clearly a swing state. It jumps back and forth. Georgia, maybe not so much, but do you know what happened in 1992 and in these two elections right here, Georgia? In these two elections, Jimmy Carter was running for president. Jimmy Carter's from Georgia, and he's a Democrat. In 1992, Bill Clinton was running for president, and he is from Arkansas, a Southern man as well. You know, but otherwise, Georgia's gone Republican. You can see Hawaii, Idaho, you know, blah 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 blah. But according to my analysis of the September polls, boom, state by state analysis. I should probably move this over. Oh, there it is. Yeah. According to my state-by-state analysis of the current polls, all of these polls are either like in the last few weeks or whatever. I do have the Democrats running away with it. Now, you don't know me that well. He knows me a little well because I had him last year, but I'm a little off in the head, and I tend to go overboard with my analysis. And when I go overboard with my analysis, I mean I go overboard with my analysis. Elections, this one. Boom. So I'm showing my overboard analysis of the elections. So what I did was I went through every single presidential election from 1786 and Senate election, midterm election. And I went through every single one. Let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. I went through every single election for the presidency, the Senate, the House, and I did an overbearing amount of analysis on numbers. Oh, this is all me. This is all me. I got all this information from Wikipedia. I got the information from Wikipedia, and I just kind of went through it one at a time, and I typed out a bunch of formulas. And basically, here was my premise. My premise was, can I successfully predict the presidential election based on the previous couple of years? The midterm, the previous presidential election, things like that nature. And the thing was, I devised a bunch of yes-no questions. And these yes-no questions are based on whether or not like incumbent parties like retain their positions, whether they increased in numbers, like things of that nature, purely numerical. And it comes down to my prediction versus what happened. My prediction is, will the incumbent party retain the presidency? Will the incumbent party retain the presidency? Will the Democrats keep the presidency, or will the Republicans keep the presidency if whoever's in party? And then basically, if it's green, I was correct. If it was red, I was wrong. And over the past 230 years, I have been correct 75% of the time. Over the past 230 years of elections, I have been correct 75% of the time. I'll tell you right now, my prediction, you can see it right here, what I've highlighted, those two numbers right there. My prediction for 2020, according to these numbers, has the Republicans retaining the House, retaining the presidency. But according to the polls, as we talked about earlier, according to the polls, the Democrats are running away with it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be so much fun.
Who do you think Republicans are going to
Or whether it's going to be Trump or Biden, honestly, I don't know. I don't have I don't have a prediction because I'm not a betting man. You know, I'm not a betting man. You know, I don't make those kinds of predictions. I'm just saying, like, based on the numerical data, here's what I see happening. Based on the other numerical data, here's the opposite that I see happening. You know, it's fun fact. What happens if it ends up in a tie? You need 270 electoral votes to win. What happens if it ends up in a 269-269 tie? Do you know what happens? Yes. The House of Representatives votes to determine who the president is, but just the president. The Senate determines the vice president, which means that if it ends in a 269-269 tie, you would have President Joe Biden and Vice President Mike Pence. Think about that for a second. Now, again, not sharing any political opinions because I don't like to share political opinions. I don't like to get into those type of debates. I'm not other teachers, you know. Joe Biden, I believe in my heart, is not long for this world. I'm just saying. I don't think that he is. I think that mentally, I feel like he's failing. And it scares me. But it's going to be a very interesting couple of years. I'm so excited for November. Anyway, I'm going to sign off on the live stream. So goodbye there. Click and click. But yeah, I am legitimately super